Higher education is instrumental in fostering growth, reducing poverty, and boosting shared prosperity. It benefits not just individuals, but entire educational systems. The World Bank says a highly skilled workforce with lifelong access to a solid post-secondary education is a prerequisite for innovation and growth. Well-educated people are more employable and productive. They earn higher wages and cope with economic shocks much better. Tertiary education benefits not just the individual, but society as a whole. Graduates of tertiary education are more environmentally conscious, have healthier habits, and have a higher level of civic participation. Also, increased tax revenues and higher earnings, healthier children, and reduced family size all build stronger nations. In short, tertiary education institutions prepare individuals not only by providing them with adequate and relevant job skills, but also by preparing them to be active members of our communities and societies. The economic returns for tertiary education graduates are the highest in the entire education system, an estimated 17% increase in earnings as compared with 10% for primary and 7% for secondary education. These high returns are even greater in sub-Saharan Africa at an estimated 21% increase in earning for tertiary education graduates. As the youth population continues to swell, and graduation rates through elementary and secondary education increase dramatically, governments are increasingly understanding that the entire educational system, from early childhood through tertiary education, must reflect the new social and economic needs of the global knowledge economy, which increasingly demands a better trained, more skilled, and adaptable workforce. However, challenges remain. Even with the larger pool of graduates of tertiary education, many do not have locally relevant skills needed for a successful integration into the labor market. At the same time, larger numbers of students increase the strain on publicly funded institutions of higher learning, and many countries with limited resources are struggling to finance the growing needs of a larger student body without compromising the quality of their educational offerings. Nigeria's response to this challenge was the establishment of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, an intervention agency set up to provide supplementary support to all levels of public tertiary institutions, with the main objective of using funding alongside project management for the rehabilitation, restoration, and consolidation of tertiary education in Nigeria. The fund, having proved effective and successful in its first 10 years, continues to seek and find new ways to improve teaching and learning in higher institutions. These are the chronicles of the journey to institutionalize research and development in Nigeria. Hello, and welcome to this edition of TETFund, The Paradigm Shift. I am Stanley Bentu. The imperative for investing in tertiary education derives from two major questions. One, what are the benefits of investing? And two, what are the consequences of not investing? The benefits include higher employment levels, that is, lower levels of unemployment, higher wages, greater social stability, increased civil engagement, and better health outcomes. Even more significant and perhaps revealing is examining what happens when countries underinvest in their tertiary education systems. The consequences of underinvestment include brain drain and talent loss, limited access to applied research capacity for local problem solving, limitations to economic growth due to low levels of skills in the workforce, low quality of teaching and learning at every level of education, and, perhaps most glaringly, expanded wealth inequality within and among nations, with those investing proportionately more experiencing resultant growth rates far outpacing those with lower levels of investment and strategic development. Now, does any of that sound familiar? I'll bet it does. Now, in this episode of The Paradigm Shift, we'll be looking at TETFund's partnership to provide opportunities for Nigerian scholars abroad and other interventions, especially as they impact a specific tertiary institution in Nigeria. But before we do that, it's important that we gain clarity about the guidelines for accessing TETFund intervention funds.
It is the responsibility of beneficiary institutions seeking to access TETFund intervention funds to acquaint themselves with the guidelines for accessing TETFund intervention funds. These guidelines apply to all tertiary educational institutions defined as a public university, polytechnic, or college of education. The Board of Trustees of the fund is statutorily charged with the responsibility of administering, managing, and disbursement of the funds to the public tertiary educational institutions, and to make and issue guidelines from time to time on the use of monies received from the fund. Beneficiaries of the fund are required to apply the intervention funds for the following: provision of essential physical infrastructure for teaching and learning, provision of instructional materials and equipment, research, book development and publication, academic staff training and development, any other need which in the opinion of the Board of Trustees is critical and essential for the improvement of quality and maintenance of standards in the higher educational institutions. To be enlisted as a TETFund beneficiary, the following shall be fulfilled by prospective institutions. The prospective beneficiary shall be a public tertiary institution, that is, federal or state university, polytechnic, and college of education. The institution shall be recognized by the relevant regulatory body, the NUC, MBTE, or NCCE, as the case may be, and the evidence of this should be available both with the institution and the regulatory body for citing. The institution shall have been established by law by an Act of Parliament or Edict of the State House of Assembly and signed into law by the President or State Governor, as the case may be. Academic activities, that is, student admission, teaching and learning, shall have commenced at the institution. The prospective institution shall formally apply to the fund to be enlisted as a beneficiary of the fund. TETFund shall visit to verify that academic activities have commenced and thereafter recommend to the Board of Trustees for enlistment as a beneficiary. And following approval by the Board of Trustees, the institution shall be enlisted and formally notified. Guidelines for accessing TETFund intervention funds. Beneficiaries of the fund are required to submit project proposals for approval, upon which the funds will be applied. TETFund requires that such projects shall be in line with the beneficiary institution's core mandate and should be relevant to teaching, learning, and research, including improving the learning and teaching environment. Annual interventions. The annual intervention is a yearly allocation assigned to all beneficiaries of TETFund for the following: infrastructural and equipment and furniture-based intervention projects. Fabrication of equipment. This is for polytechnics only. Entrepreneurship. This for universities only. Teaching practice for colleges of education only. Library intervention. Academic staff training and development. institution-based research, journal publication, conference attendance, manuscript development, TETFund project maintenance, ICT support, advocacy, and publicity. The special intervention. This is usually allocated on equality of geopolitical zone as enshrined in the Establishment Act and guarded by such emergencies and exigencies as approved by the Board of Trustees. Special High Impact Intervention. The Special High Impact Intervention, however, seeks to massively inject funds into selected tertiary institutions to achieve a major turnaround through program upgrade and improvement in the teaching and learning environment. Beneficiaries are selected by the Board of Trustees based on the age of the institution per geopolitical zone, amongst other criteria.
Well, now that we know who qualifies to become a beneficiary of TETFund interventions and how they can go about gaining access, it's time to take a look at the impact that TETFund is making in our tertiary institutions. And who better to tell us the story than the beneficiaries themselves? Now, recently, a delegation from the Benue State University, led by the Pro-Chancellor of the university, paid a visit to the Executive Secretary of TETFund, architect Sonny Echono, at the fund's corporate headquarters. Here are the details.
Benue State, one of the north-central states in Nigeria with a population of about 4.2 million people, was created in 1976. The state derives its name from the Benue River, which is the second largest river in Nigeria. The name Benue is coined from a Bantoid word, Bieno, meaning the waters of the hippopotamus. The state borders Nasarawa State to the north, Taraba State to the east, Kogi State to the west, Enugu State to the southwest, Ebonyi and Cross River States to the south, and has an international border with Cameroon to the southeast. It is inhabited predominantly by the Tiv, Idoma, Igede and Etulo peoples. Popularly known as Nigeria's food basket, Benue is home of the University of Benue, a state-owned university located in Makurdi, the state capital. In 2006, student enrollment was over 19,000 by 7 faculties, 23 departments. The university offers undergraduate and postgraduate programs with a catalogue of over 58 graduate programs across 9 colleges and faculties. It is accredited by the National Universities Commission. The current Vice-Chancellor of the Benue State University is Professor Umsum Moses Kembe. As evidence of his commitment to the improvement of tertiary education in Nigeria, TETFund has committed more than 7 billion naira in the last 22 years for the execution of various intervention projects at the Benue State University. This was revealed by the chairman of the Governing Council and Pro-Chancellor of the university, Sebastian Hon, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, when he led a delegation from the institution on a visit to TETFund, where they were warmly received by the fund's boss, architect Sonny Echono, and his management team. In his remarks during the visit, the Pro-Chancellor reeled out a long list of infrastructure projects which have been completed courtesy TETFund interventions.
Our campus is dominated with TETFund-sponsored legacy structures, including the Central Library, laboratories, lecture theaters, faculty buildings, Student Social Center, and Entrepreneurship Development Center, not excluding research, IBR, NRF, ARJ, AMB, academic training and conferences, both foreign and local, postdoctoral, bench work, and developments in ICT.
Hon went on to mention a few projects which were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic.
It It is important to mention that the COVID-19 lockdown affected the speed and cost as it were. The projects include: 1, construction and furnishing of Faculty of Education building, which is 85% complete or completed; construction and furnishing of Research, Development and Innovation Center, which is at 90%; construction and furnishing of Academic Office building, which is at 80%; construction and furnishing of block of offices for College of Health Sciences, which is at 90% construction stage; construction and furnishing of Faculty of Science building, which is at 45% completion stage. We are optimistic that very soon the university will invite you and your team to formally unveil some of the completed structures.
He further called for a waiver to access the 2021 and 2022 TETFund allocations to enable the university address its challenges, in addition to a special intervention in the institution's library that was recently damaged by a heavy storm.
We wish to also report that our central library suffered severe damage caused by a recent storm. This has left the building and property therein exposed to harsh weather elements. We desire to submit a request for disaster intervention if it pleases you and the funds.
The Executive Secretary of TETFund, in his response, recognized the institution as one of the first to be established by a state governor, even as he commended Benue State University for its massive contribution to the pool of relevant manpower for the country's knowledge economy.
If I recall very well, the Benue State University was one of the first, I think in the northern region, it's about the first in the whole of the northern region to be established by the state government. And we've had this culture of producing manpower. And many of our graduates all across the northern states and indeed other parts of the country. So you have a very rich history that you ought to be proud of. And I'm delighted that TETFund has been part of that history, especially in the areas of infrastructure and academic staff development.
On the appeal for completion of all ongoing projects in the university, Architect Echona had this to say.
But as a matter of policy, we are taking a comprehensive review in the last 1 month of all our standing projects, with a view to bringing those that are close to completion, speedy completion through various strategies we've identified here. I'm also pleased to report that we have secured the concurrence of the Minister of Education, that from next year we will have a special provision in our allocation for the completion of ongoing projects. Because what is common to nearly every university, polytechnic and college of education. We have projects that commenced, and because of the fluctuations in prices of important building materials, because of the delays that are associated with COVID lockdowns and all the other disruptions to economic activities, we now had both time and cost overruns. And the earlier we address this, the better for us as a country. So we don't have abandoned projects between all our purposes.
The Executive Secretary, who said TETFund has a very high rate of completion of projects, promised that the fund would also look into the request for special intervention on the Benue State University Library that was affected by the storm through its Stability Fund.
Now, it's not only within the borders of Nigeria that TETFund can fund intervention schemes. The fund's tentacles of opportunity stretch beyond that. The British government realizes this and, as such, interacted with TETFund to expand its partnership offers.
A delegation from the British Council, led by the United Kingdom government's international education champion, paid a courtesy visit to the Executive Secretary of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund at the fund's corporate headquarters in Abuja. During the visit, Team leader Professor Steve Smith disclosed that this was the biggest ever delegation on education to Nigeria, whose objective is to work out a partnership which includes key stakeholders in the education subsector, like the Ministry of Education, the NUC, and TETFund.
And all of those meetings were focused really on how we might set up a group to implement a development of increased transnational education activity. We're very aware of the limitations on both sides of wanting to set up campuses here. We think a much better way to proceed is, rather than just encourage more and more students to come to the UK, I mean, we want Nigerian students to come to the UK, but the numbers here are so vast that the only way we're going to work together is by partnership between institutions here.
According to Smith, there is a need for Nigeria to prioritize research and development and to release publications, adding that citations of such intellectual work adds value to the nations of origin.
We also noted, particularly, Executive Secretary, your focus on the research aspirations, and we had a very good discussion, I think, on that. And so one of the things I want to follow up on is how can the United Kingdom's universities develop long-standing, sustainable partnership relations in research. It's not going to be an immediate win, but if you look at the position of Nigerian universities in the World League tables, as we said in that meeting in April, the one guaranteed way to improve the standing of both sets of universities is to have significant international research collaboration, and we're very interested in how we can do that.
In a presentation, the Executive Secretary gave a brief history of the fund and asked the British Council delegates for support and partnership in the following areas: research and development, ICT, academic staff training and development.
Now, our funding is guaranteed in the sense that, unlike the regular budget, where revenue projections are made and performance of the budget is contingent on achieving those targets, our revenue comes the year before. So it is the tax collections for the preceding year that is applied to the succeeding year. So what we are deploying this year are taxes collected last year. And that's why we already know, and it's already available at the time commitments are being made. We want to see this partnership grow in multiple dimensions. First, in the area of research and development and innovation. Two, in linkages. We want to learn from your experience between industry, the academia, and how we as an institution, and indeed across our entire government, how we can create that ecosystem that will deliver high quality standard education for our people. And we will look forward to hearing from you on that. Then two, the other focus on the changing mode of pedagogy, delivery systems to support it, and leveraging of ICT to do all of that. And the multiple benefits of it, you know, data mining, basically Internet of Things, using, we now have a platform trying to do, to monitor and also check things like plagiarism in our thesis, and all the, even improving the integrity of our examinations, and so on and so forth. And finally, the issue of academic staff training and exchanges that I talked about.
Members of the delegation include Lucy Pearson, the Country Director, British Council; Professor Richard Follett, Vice President, University of Sussex; Professor Wendy Alexander, Scottish Education Champion; Madeline Ansell, Director, Education, British Council; and Oscar Taps Cotton, Deputy Director, Department for Education, in addition to others.
Now, if ever there was any doubt about TETFund's push for research and development as a solution to Nigeria's socio-economic challenges, well, here is your answer. In order to compare countries and knowledge economy development, the World Bank developed a framework and identified key knowledge economy pillars. education and training, research and innovation, economic incentives and institutional regime, ICT and infrastructure. Education, especially higher education, is important for knowledge economy development. Higher education institutions are important for the creation, dissemination, knowledge transfer, and spillover of knowledge to the industry. And that is the paradigm shift. Join us again on the next edition of the program. But until then, thank you for stopping by. Good night.